If you're a woman in your 20s trying to build muscle, you've likely been told to train 5 to 6 days per week, chase the pump, and live in a calorie deficit. The truth is that most of that is actually holding you back. No one talks about the burnout, the bloating, the hormonal chaos, and why training more doesn't always mean more gains. In this video, I'm breaking down what nobody tells you about building muscle in your 20s so that you can stop spinning your wheels and train in a way that actually works. Let's start with this. You don't need to train 5 to 6 days per week to see optimal results. And in fact, it's actually better that you don't, because fatigue is the enemy of muscle growth. It actually interferes with the things that build muscle in the first place. Training 5 to 6 days per week creates way more fatigue than training 4 days per week. And if it's actually programmed correctly, you get more out of doing 4 days per week than you do 5 to 6. And what I found is that a lot of people who place the expectations on themselves to train 6 days per week only end up going 4 or 5 days anyway. So if you properly program yourself for a 4-day program, you're going to be getting way more out of it because you're not trying to set this high expectation of getting 5 or 6 days and then missing 2 every single week. So what I recommend for this is using an upper-lower 4-day split. In this video, we won't get into all of the details of how to program that, but just know your upper-lower split is your best bet, especially if you're a woman in your 20s trying to optimize and build muscle while also living your life outside of the gym. The second thing that nobody tells you when you are looking to build muscle in your 20s is that most influencers do not show the true behind the scenes. The influencers that you aspire to look like are struggling with bloating, gut health issues, hormonal issues, high levels of stress, inconsistent periods due to training, the acne they get from all the poor quality workout supplements, and the constant flow of energy drinks that destroy their gut health. If you want to become a true high performer where you're getting results, you look like you train hard, and the effort that you put in actually shows, following the way that most influencers do things is not the path. Because again, they're not showing what truly goes on behind the scenes. And if you follow down their path, it's a quick way to burn out on this journey. So instead of aspiring to look like these influencers, aspire to look like the best version of yourself and find a way that works for you. Structure your training appropriately, follow an actual program. And when you're prioritizing your protein and your macros, also make sure that you're prioritizing your health through the quality of foods that you're eating. And lastly, don't worry about all of these workout supplements that influencers push on you. Influencers are influencers for a reason. Yes, they can inspire you and they can motivate you, but consuming all of these products that have highly damaging ingredients in them is not worth it. They're not needed for results. And in fact, I think it's harmful to results because they create this cascade of negative effects, negative impacts within your body so that your internal health is not functioning optimally, which in turn results in a struggle to get the external results to show. Being a high performer in your 20s isn't measured by how much you do, but how smart you do it. Being a high performer isn't about doing the most, it's about choosing the right things to focus on. So doing more and more exercises and just aiming to do more over time is a very quick track to burnout and a really easy way to restrict your results. We have to remember that rest and recovery are a sign of self-respect and discipline. Real high performers see recovery as a strength, not a weakness. And truthfully, I believe being on the go all the time, keeping yourself super busy is just a reflection of how disconnected you are from yourself. You can still be driven, ambitious, and results-oriented without running yourself into the ground. There's also a few myths that I want to cover that nobody is telling you about building muscle in your 20s. Number one is that you don't need to be constantly drenched in sweat or chasing a pump. Real muscle growth comes from a strategic approach that's built on the actual principles of hypertrophy. And if you want me to make a video on the principles of hypertrophy so that you know what to focus on, comment below. The second myth is that more is always better. More is not better because there's a point to where you get diminishing returns, and in fact, you drive so much fatigue that it actually harms your results. It inhibits the process of building muscle. What the real key is progressive overload, and you need to have that built into your program in a strategic way, not just I'm gonna lift more over time. And the third myth is that you can stay the same body weight while changing over time. Yes, you can body recomp, but the truth is a lot of women severely underestimate how much muscle tissue it's gonna require for you to actually change your physique. In my 6 or 7 years of training, I've put on 12 to 15 pounds of muscle. That's what this looks like on my frame. So if you have been fluctuating through the same plus or minus 5 pounds for years, it's very likely that you've just been maintaining. Real muscle growth requires real commitment. That doesn't mean you need to go into a big bulking phase. You can very easily just be slightly above maintenance and not put on a lot of body fat while you gain muscle tissue. Now let's get into the 4 things that actually move the needle forward. Number 1 is phased nutrition strategies, not always being in a deficit. And if you want to look like you lift, you're gonna have a little bit better of a strategy than just I'm gonna eat more protein or I'm gonna eat healthier or tracking your food without an actual purpose or direction in mind. Second is having long-term consistency over short bursts of motivation. If you are stopping and starting every 2 or 3 months, you aren't allowing enough time for the results to compound. And in my experience as a coach, what I've seen is that the only way to gain real long-term consistency is having a plan and a strategy that you actually trust and actually works. It's having what I call the 3 C's: clarity, confidence, and consistency. When you have the clarity on your plan and you know what works and you know what strategy you need to follow, you then have the confidence to stay consistent and be consistent over the long term. If you are lacking the clarity and then you're lacking the confidence, consistency becomes a huge issue. Third is time, because building muscle tissue takes years, not months, not 8-week programs. It takes consistent compounding effort, not stopping and starting. So if the approach you're using seems really daunting to follow through on for the next 3 to 5 years, reconsider your approach. Is the strategy you're using an actual integrated part of your lifestyle? And the fourth thing that moves the needle forward is tracking. Understanding the power of tracking, check-ins, and data to drive decisions strategically strategically instead of emotionally. When your emotions drive your decisions, you do things like quitting your cut early, not sticking to your meal plan, not sticking to your macros, not being consistent in the gym. And the reason you're making these emotional decisions is because you don't have a strategy to fall back on. You don't have a strategy to trust that you know is going to work. You're questioning yourself, you're second guessing yourself at every turn. So having these points where you're able to track your training, you're able to track your nutrition, you're able to track your weight, you're able to track your results, knowing what biofeedback to look at, and then how to make decisions based off of that for your greater good is the key. So if you're in your 20s and you're trying to do everything right, you don't need to add more. You need to add what actually works. So take this as your permission slip to find a real strategy that can integrate into your life and ultimately trust the long game. But you can only trust the long game when you know your strategy is working. If this hit home for you, drop a comment and let me know what you're taking away. And if you're tired of spinning your wheels and you want a clear plan that actually works to build muscle without burning you out, that's literally what I help women do. You can find out more info about my coaching on all of my social medias that are linked in the description and the application that's linked there as well. Or just DM me the word growth on Instagram and we can talk about where you're at and what's missing. Because muscle isn't built by doing more, it's built by doing more of what matters.